I'm here on Gadi land, the land of the people of the Eora Nation, and I'd like to acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging, and recognise that this land was stolen and that sovereignty was never ceded. Waterloo is about 3 kilometres from the Sydney CBD. I have lived in the Waterloo public housing estate for over 30 years, and the government is threatening to destroy my home and my community. It is the largest public housing estate in the country, home to around 3,000 people. It is set to be demolished and the public land given over to developers to build private dwellings, with only 30% of those to be social housing, managed by community housing providers, not government. 20% will be so-called affordable, meaning the other 50% will be unaffordable. 100% public housing to be replaced with 0%. Reasons given by the government to justify this include social mix. With no evidence to support it, they claim that a mix of 30% social housing and 70% private is preferred. It so happens that public housing tenants make up 30% of the population of Waterloo. As it is, social mix sorted. They claim that public housing leads to antisocial behaviour, which is nonsense, and is the government perpetuating the undeserved stigma surrounding public housing. There are some people with high needs living in public housing, of course. Where else would they live? Community housing providers are not very tolerant of difference. The size and diversity of the Waterloo estate means all kinds of people have a chance to find sympathy and support among their largely welcoming neighbours. It is also close to many support services, some of which have arisen specifically to meet the needs of the residents. The Premier recently called us a failed experiment. I am not sure what the experiment was, but experiments are usually something to be learned from, not simply destroyed. The people who live there are best placed to know what could be improved and have worked voluntarily for decades to make it a better place for all and continue to do so. Rather than a failure, it is a shining example of community cooperation and backs the case for, rather than against, large public housing estates. They have said that our homes are no longer fit for purpose. They have been saying that for 8 years. Well, we live in them and they are definitely serving that purpose. They have said that our homes have reached the end of life. There has been no evidence to back this statement, and as they weren't all built at the same time, surely they don't all expire at the same time. No assessments of the buildings have been done, it is just blathering. The first stage of the proposed destruction will target 749 homes. This will put around 1,000 people ahead of the 58,000 already on the public housing waiting list. It is ridiculous to demolish this many homes when there is an urgent need for more housing, not less. There is a housing crisis. It is in the news every day. A crisis is a crisis, a disaster, a catastrophe, an emergency, and should have governments doing everything possible to fix it. It won't fix itself. Developers and property investors won't fix it. They have no interest in the general public and are wasting space with apartments that most people can't afford. There is also a global climate crisis which can't simply be ignored. The whole world is being asked to cut carbon emissions. Housing construction is a huge emitter, and to get the best bang for our carbon bucks, buildings should be made and maintained to last for lifetimes. Public housing at South Eveleigh and Glebe are only 30 years old, yet also set to be demolished. It's a shocking waste. The destruction of Waterloo will mean tens of thousands of tonnes of rubble going to landfill in truckload after truckload. It will mean the death of hundreds of mature trees that keep us cool, clean our air and are home to hundreds of birds, bees and other wildlife. Retaining our homes and repairing them is a better idea. Updating them to cope with rising temperatures is cheaper and easier than demolition and relocation, and less traumatic for residents. Some have already had balconies and awnings added and are more pleasant and energy efficient than they were before. Some have been successfully converted to be fully accessible. There are many ways to improve existing buildings, and the government has the means to explore the possibilities. Government should be leaders. They should be exploring ways to improve sustainability and living conditions, and training a workforce to do it. The need is not going to go away, and lessons will have to be learned and shared. Public housing is a good place to start. Update existing public housing and convert other public buildings into decent housing. Buy land and build new housing to meet actual housing needs. Stop the war on public housing. It is not a problem, it is a solution. We have to fight to save Waterloo. They will not stop there while developers and governments see public housing as surplus land. They will not stop with public housing either. Already applications have been made to demolish private apartment blocks to be replaced with single dwellings or fewer luxury apartments. It is not only public housing tenants who will be shoved aside for profit. More and more people will be priced out of their neighbourhoods. Save our homes, save our suburbs, save our cities. Housing for people, not for profit.